It's the Morning Star Drive 117.8. You soaring up with sky, now's the time, don't delay. I'm sitting in my ride and it's time to fly. So let's realign, just listen and fill your mind.
Hey guys, how's it going? It's Tuesday, April 18th, and this is the Morning Star Drive on 117.8. We're on YouTube, so make sure to subscribe, follow us on SoundCloud, and make sure to support us on Patreon. So what is happening on this wonderful and awesome Tuesday? We've got current news from around the world, the practical word study, and of course, Provi in the media. All right, everyone, how are you doing today? Yes, I hope you guys are enjoying your week already and really thankful that you guys are joining us here on the Morning Star Drive this morning or afternoon or evening, whatever it is, but keep liking, keep commenting, want to hear from you guys, see how you're doing. Let us build this community together, whatever country we're from. It doesn't matter. Let's do this together. So Q&A Thursday is just around the corner, so get your questions ready for this week. Q&A is a very popular segment every Thursday. It is a section right after praise. I enjoyed a lot, too, just to hear the different things that we're going through. And if anything, I think it's just because I've been in this history for like 25 years. A lot of the questions and a lot of experiences people had, I've already seen them before, and that's why it's a lot easier for me to answer them. I am not like some miracle worker or anything like that. It's just that it's all experience. It's experience, working this history for over 20 years, and then you kind of go through all these different types of questions and a lot of situational things that happen from person to person. So I hope that you guys just throw your questions in. You can comment below. You can DM me also. Okay? So yes, it is a good morning on this wonderful Tuesday. Just happy to be alive and be able to do this podcast together with everyone out there. Yeah, it's a little bit difficult. Someone was mentioning a little bit like, it's hard on a radio podcast because, unlike a lecture, you're standing in front of someone and you get to see their reactions right away. But I'm so thankful for all the comments because I get to see the reactions, maybe not in real time, but when I see them, it's super encouraging. So I'm thankful for everyone out there writing those amazing and awesome comments. I had a quite interesting thing last night. So this happened just last night, like really, really late at night. But a friend called me from another country, and when that friend called me, the interesting thing they asked was basically about like KJS and is everything okay? And for me, I was just like, oh yeah, it's like this. But I was like, in the back of my head, I'm like, it's like April 16th. You know what I mean? It's like it's April 16th, and some people still don't know the full situation, which I find I'm just curious about how the information gets spread out, because like I can understand within the first 2 weeks, maybe 3 weeks, but there comes a point where it's almost like everyone knows, and there's just like rumors flying here and there that it's probably better for countries, or I don't know what you would say, but it's probably just better that everyone knows what's going on, and from that point on, people just deal with the shock at first and they go through it. Like, look at us guys. We went through the shock from the very, very beginning, and 2-3 weeks later, we're kind of like, well, it happened, let's deal with it, and we move forward. It took about 2 weeks, but we moved forward with it. The shock, we eventually got through it, and I think it's healthier for us, right? I think it's very, very healthy for us to kind of deal with the shock, because regardless of when you hear it, you're going to get the shock. But if you're too far behind in the news and you don't know what's going, because I'm going to give you some updates today, because we all know that Sunsteam's trial is today. It is today, so everyone, please pray for the trial to go well. I'm not sure what time it's at, but most likely it should be around like 2:30 p.m. Korea time, just like it's been every other time. But, so that's something that we need to pray for. Pray for the defense lawyers, pray for the prosecution, pray for the judges. I would even say pray for the media, so it just doesn't go out of hand, all these different types of things like that. So that trial is today, and I will try to report on this one. I'm thinking I can report this by Thursday, like get the full answer of what happened during that trial. But there is another interesting update that did come up the other day. This happened about 2 days ago, and it's on Naver, and basically what it says is that the Providence successor, Jung Jo-eun, and 6 arrest warrants have been sent out. So what's happening is Jung Jo-eun, real name Kim Ji-sun, who is considered the next president of CGM, is at the crossroads of arrest. So on the 13th, the Daejeon District Prosecutor's Office requested arrest warrants for 6 people involved in Providence, including KJS. And it's known that KJS, also known as Sister J, participated in the crime by enticing the victims to come to Sunsim or condoning the sexual assault. And in a worship service after the Netflix documentary aired last month, KJS did say, she said herself, that in their church alone, confirmed that there are like 7 victims, 2 of them are minors, and distanced herself from Sunsim's crime. However, there's a lot of people who left Providence, refuted KJS's claim, saying that she was an accomplice in selecting and interviewing women with Sunsim, right? Last month, the Daejeon District Prosecutor's Office and the Chungcheongnam-do Police Agency jointly searched and seized the Providence Training Center in Kumsangun, Chungcheongnam-do, as well as KJS's residence and church. So the interrogation of the suspects before arrest, which is the examination of the validity of the arrest warrant for 6 people, including KJS, was held on Monday, right? Or Sunday, I believe, Sunday. And as the due date for Sunsim's arrest comes back on the 27th, the prosecution is speeding up the criminal investigation surrounding Sunsim, right? So this, that's kind of the latest news that did come out on the weekend, and that's about KJS, and 6 arrest warrants were given out. So these people are going to be investigated for being accomplices to the crime, right? So that's something that I found quite interesting. So they are moving forward with it. I don't know the laws on how Korea actually prosecutes accomplices. I don't know how strong the rules are, but that is kind of what's happening. So is it going to affect Sunsim's trial? Yes, it's going to affect, everything's going to affect Sunsim's trial for sure. But these ones look more like arrest warrants for being accomplice to the crime. So they're basically being under investigation, and they could possibly face like prosecution and possibly jail time also. So that is something that should be quite interesting to figure out. But what's even more interesting is their arrest warrants were given out, and their trial is going to be, the trial was yesterday, 2:30 p.m. So tomorrow's Wednesday podcast, that's when I'll kind of, I'll see what the media says and what's the update for what their trial was like on Monday. It was yesterday. I remember I record these podcasts a day, like the day before. So I won't even get the results until the Wednesday podcast. So just got to wait for tomorrow, and I'll give you the update for the first trial for the 6 arrest warrants, including KJS. And then on Thursday, I'll give you the update on what Sunsim's trial was like too. So then we'll get all the information. I know it's a little bit late, but at least you'll get it, right? At least in a timely manner. Okay. So, and there's one thing I do want to say is I really, really hope that as people of God, like just thinking as a person of God, as someone who's learned properly from Sunsim too, let's just make sure our hearts are pure in these situations, which means, let's not pray for destruction or calamity or bad things to fall upon other people, no matter what they've done to you. The best prayer that we have is let them receive according to what they have done. Like that's the best prayer that we can do, right? And we don't know the full situation either. And, I know with this situation, the division that's popped up, that people have, some people have been really hurt. And some people have really made others upset. But for us, having the greater character is to make sure that we don't hate people, make sure that we don't actively want people to suffer and go through pain. And as people of God, we are not the judge, and it's God who judges, and we are the ones that pray. And what do we pray? Like I said, the best prayer Sunsim says is, please judge them according to what they have done. And Sunsim actually says that's the scariest prayer, to be judged according to what you have done. So that is something that I hope that we can really, really think about too. Either way. Okay. So today also there's going to be Provi in the media. And in Provi in the media, I have this interesting article on Bitter Winter. It's about apostates. And this article is about ex-members who become apostates often learn their role from anti-cult movements. So one of the anti-cult movements that's working on this Netflix is obviously Exodus, or the anti-Providence organization that KDH has made. So this is an article talking about how ex-members who become apostates learn their roles from anti-cult movements. So this is kind of an interesting one. I think that a lot of you guys are going to learn a lot from too. Okay, so the poll is a fun one because, we have been doing some serious stuff a lot for the last couple of weeks. So it's a fun one about the best movie of 2023. And of course, I just picked like the blockbuster ones, right? Not the ones that are smaller, but the blockbuster ones. So right now on top is Top Gun Maverick at 35%, Avatar 2 at 25%. John Wick 4, I think, is only going to appeal to guys, now that I think about it, right? Because this is 3 hours of John Wick killing 199 people. And that's not including other people being killed by others. This is like the first 3 John Wicks, 200 people were, it was like 200 people were killed in the first 3 movies altogether. And this one movie is supposed to be even higher. Maybe it might be 150 deaths by John Wick. So I find it kind of funny that it's like this. I do. I just think it's funny, to be honest. But it's a very, very therapeutic movie for myself, if anything else. Either way. All right. So there it is. That is that's the poll for today. So let's get into some music from some member artists from around the world. Today's featured artist of the day is none other than the Sumney Boys from America, and this is one of my favorite songs from their latest album, Tales of a Longing Heart. That song is Nothing Could Go Wrong. The second song is going to be PGY from the PMA in Korea with Dr. Rain, and we'll end things off with Renee Lai from Taiwan with a cover of GEM. The song is Angels.
Be a fast life, a short life, depending how you living. Nothing could go wrong if I'm with you, it's so fulfilling. If you keep the time, really God walks with you. Not even just walks with you, he will even talk with you. That is right. Been feeling life is different, everything depends on me. And having my own thoughts, that's really a test to me. The more I make myself, the more valuable I become. I have to take action, that's the final outcome. How could I ever forget the moments that we spent together? It's those past memories that will put you together. It's what you do after the mess up that counts. I give glory and thanks even in times of doubt. Don't just say you have the heart but don't do it. You say you want, you gotta show him and prove it. You have to be a life the Lord really remembers. Don't just walk around for no reason, do better. Pushing the pace as I start this race. I have to get my mind straight so I can become great. The time I have now I really must cherish. It could be gone at any moment, it really just vanish. I know it's been a while since I sat and even wrote a song. I wonder if my words sound good or even flow at all, and how I want to share your words to the entire world. Alright, I'm sorry, let me fix myself. If I think of you, I know I will do well. It's times like these I know I will prevail. Don't just say you have the heart but don't do it. You say you want, you gotta show him and prove it. You have to be a life the Lord really remembers. Nothing could go wrong if we do it together.
so good to see you, Mr. Cloud. Think I am getting worse. Where is the shit? Oh, you need to wait a bit. Okay then. Oh, I sit here. Alright, alright. Looks you are getting darker, mister. Hey, are you okay? I hear some words, but I don't get it. Why is she just kissing my rusty eye? I feel dizzy, doctor. Do you hear me? Where are you? It's a shiny day. It's a rainy night. It's bright. Where am I now? Is it heaven? Mr. Cloud, me. Nothing looks changed, but well, I feel better, thanks.
别怕漫长的黑夜，抬头看看星星，此刻正脸呈现。也许是一场考验，看散落的心灵，此刻是否并肩？当你祈祷能看见奇迹，你是否相信？那答案就是你。你是最平凡却最温暖的天使，此刻风雨里，可惜有你的坚持，你带泪的笑容，有天会带来雨后的彩虹，世界因为你在痛里有感动。多少次沿路颠簸，多少大雨滂沱，我们都曾度过。尽管会怕会难过，同舟的你和我，才不必退缩。当你祈祷能看见奇迹，你是否相信？那答案就是你。你是最平凡却最温暖的天使，此刻风雨里，可惜有你的坚持，你带泪的笑容，有天会带来雨后的彩虹，世界因为你在痛里有感动。
And that was Renee Lai from Taiwan with the song. It's a cover of GEM Angels. Before that, PGY from PMA in Korea with Dr. Rain. And of course, feature artist of the day, that's the Somebody Boys from America with Nothing Could Go Wrong. All right, so let's get into some news going on around the world. And of course, as brides of this history, with the power of our prayers, we need to not only pray for ourselves, our churches, our nations, but we need to pray for what is going on in the entire world. And we need to repent, especially at this time. So let's start off with updates from the Sudanese fighting that has started from the weekend. So further fierce fighting between the army and the RSF. Fierce clashes have been reported across Sudan as fighting between rival armed factions continues to spread. Violence between the army and a paramilitary group called the RSF continued overnight into its third day. More than 50 people have been killed, and one estimate puts the number of injured at more than 1,000. Both sides are claiming they control key sites in the capital, Khartoum, such as a presidential palace, and earlier on Sunday, they held a temporary ceasefire to allow the wounded to be evacuated, although it was not clear how strictly they stuck to it. Doctors warned that the situation at hospitals in Khartoum is extremely difficult and that the fighting was stopping both staff and medical supplies from reaching injured people. The fighting is part of a vicious power cycle within the country's military leadership, which has escalated into violence between rival factions. The two men at its center disagree over how the country should transition to civilian rule. Sudan has been run by generals since a coup overthrew the long-standing authoritarian president Omar al-Bashir in 2019. Let's move over to the EU, to the European Union, as they reject Ukraine grain bans by Poland and Hungary. The European Commission has rejected bans introduced by Poland and Hungary on Ukrainian grain imports. The two countries said the measures were necessary to protect their farming sectors from cheap imports. The ban applies to grains, dairy products, sugar, fruit, vegetables, and meats, and will be in force until the end of June. The Commission said it was not up to individual member states to make trade policy. While the Commission has said that unilateral moves will not be tolerated, it has not yet specified what measures it would take against Poland and Hungary. And they said that, of course, it's challenging times and it's crucial to coordinate and align all decisions within the EU. That's from the spokesperson, but most Ukrainian grain is exported via the Black Sea, but Russia's invasion last year disrupted export routes and resulted in large quantities of the grain ending up in Central Europe. A deal with Russia, brokered by the UN and Turkey, allows Ukraine to continue exporting by sea, but Ukraine accuses Russia of slowing the process with overzealous inspections. Poland and Hungary announced the move on Saturday. The decision came after complaints from local farmers who said they were being undercut by cheaper Ukrainian grain flooding the markets. And on Sunday, Polish Economic Development and Technology Minister Waldemar Buda clarified that the ban applied to goods in transit as well as those staying in Poland. He called for talks with Ukraine to set up a scheme to ensure exports pass through Poland and do not end up on the local market. And Ukraine says the move contradicts bilateral trade agreements. So that is one of the tough things when it comes to leading a group of nations like the European Union. They're doing everything together, all decisions made together, but sometimes one country is affected more than another. So it's hard to put a blanket trade agreement on all countries, especially in very, very difficult times. Last but not least, we're going to go into the U.S. as there's another shooting, as 4 are killed in a shooting at a Sweet 16 birthday party in Alabama. Attack marks the third high-profile mass shooting in as many weeks in the U.S. following separate outbreaks of deadly gun violence in Tennessee and Kentucky. At least 4 people have been killed and 28 wounded in a shooting at a Sweet 16 birthday party in the United States, according to police and media reports. The gun attack in the small town of Dadeville in the southern U.S. state of Alabama took place late on Saturday night, authorities said on Sunday, and there was no official word on what led to the violence. The Montgomery Advertiser newspaper reported that one of the 4 people killed during the violence was a high school football player who was among those attending his sister's Sweet 16 birthday party when a gunman opened fire. So prayers go out, and a lot of prayers to think about when it comes to the U.S. and their gun policies, which is very, very difficult to change because it's part of the Constitution. So, that I've seen a lot of gun debates, and you got to look at both sides, and it's not an easy topic to go into. Either way. So that's the top 3 news around the world. Let's get to some sporting news. And NBA playoffs are going on right now. And of course, we went over a couple of the games from yesterday, but the remaining games of the first game of the first round have happened, and we start off with the LA Lakers just crushing the Memphis Grizzlies 128-112, And Rui Hachimura, his father is black, I believe his mother is Japanese, scored 9 of his 29 points in the fourth quarter, and he's got tied the franchise record for most points by a substitute in a playoff game. Austin Reeves also went 5 for 5 in the fourth, including scoring 9 straight points late in the quarter, en route to 23 total points. So great big win, and Lakers were the underdog. They are the 7th seed, while Memphis is the 2 seed, and they lose. Memphis already loses in the first game at home. In other games, it was the Milwaukee Bucks, as they lost to the Miami Heat 130-117. But the biggest blow is Giannis Antetokounmpo was ruled out for the remainder of the game. We're not sure what's going to happen, but now Miami Heat are complete the upset, and they win game 1. In the other game, it was the Miami Heat. And also the Heat lose a player. Tyler Hero breaks his right hand in game 1 versus the Bucks. So both of them have lost a player each. And then the Clippers upset the Phoenix Suns 115-110. Russell Westbrook gave a game-saving block in the last second, and Kawhi Leonard also led the way with 38 points. And I believe that last game was Denver versus Minnesota. Denver Nuggets easily dismantled the Minnesota Timberwolves 109-80, and they lead that series 1-0 as a number 1 seed in the West. In soccer news, in EPL, Arsenal, they had to win this one, but they went up 2 goals in the first half, and then they gave it away, and they ended up on a tie with West Ham. So they're now, it was a 2-2 game. They only get 1 point. They lost 2 points off that, which means they're only 4 points above 4 points above Man City, and Man City has a game in hand, which means if they win their next game, once again, they'll only be 1 point behind, which is pretty crazy, right? So that's going to be a very, very big race to the very end to see who's going to become the league champions. Only a 4-point lead right now, but Man City once again has a game in hand. Also, Manchester United defeats Nottingham Forest 2-0. Nottingham Forest isn't that good anyways. They're in the relegation group. And, Manchester United's been playing so many games. They had the Europa League quarterfinal against Sevilla, right? Also coming up, and then they have the FA Cup semifinals against Brighton. So they have a lot of games to play. Last but not least, we have the NHL, National Hockey League. The season is over. The playoffs are about to start, and we're going to start off with regular season since it's ended. Look at some of the awards. This is Connor McDavid. Connor McJesus of the Edmonton Oilers is going to basically take everything home this year. He has the Art Ross Trophy, which is the player with the most points. He has 153 points, which is 25 points more than the next person. He has a Rocket Richard Trophy for most goals. He has 64 goals. The next closest to him was 61, so that was a very, very close, tight. It was a kind of tight, but he was already up by 7 goals with only like 3 games left. So he was pretty much slated to win that. And then the Hart Trophy MVP, the odds-on favorite is Connor McDavid. He's probably going to win it for sure. Just a crazy season. He's going to have at least 3 awards, and most likely he's going to win the award when it comes to players voting for the best player in the league. And most likely that one is going to be Connor McDavid too, but he is considered the best player in the NHL right now. He's only like 24 or something like that. He's still young, making like $12 million a year, one of the highest contracts in the NHL, but he's well worth it. All right, so there it is, guys. That's the top 3 news in sports and world news. Hope you guys really enjoyed that and helps you guys in your prayers. But you know what that means. It is the golden time. And yes, it is the golden time, a time of praise and worship to the Holy Trinity. Hope all of you guys are looking forward to giving glory to God and the Holy Spirit. So, what are we going to praise and worship today? We're going to start off with an oldie but a goodie, the Flute of Truth, and then the place where the Lord dwells, and we'll end things off with a favorite, the Path of Love. So as one body of the Morning Star Drive, let's spend this time giving praise, honor, and glory to the Holy Trinity.
I just want to be right next to you. With a heart that is so full of praise, I have come to finally realize, my Lord, you're surely in this place. Always until the end, you kept your promise that you'd be with us until the end of time. Oh my Lord, you never have forgotten us. You are by our side and bless us endlessly. Lord, you are always there. Please accept our praise. We are so in love, we just want to live with you. When we think of the way you're always here running with us, we're so grateful, Lord, and we just can't forget. We're in this church of peace and love abounding. I'm rejoicing in this heaven on the earth. With my heart set firmly on that world of gold, I will keep my faith and glorify your name. Lord, you are always there. Please accept our praise. I am so in love, I just want to live with you. When I think of the way you're always here running with us, I'm so grateful, Lord, and I just can't forget. I'll live only for the word of the Lord. I'll fulfill this great history with the word of the Holy Son. Only you, Lord, you are the shepherd of my life. Oh my Lord, I am lacking, so I plead. Teach me, please. Lord, you are always there. Please accept our praise. I am so in love, I just want to live with you. When I think of the way you're always here running with us, I'm so grateful, Lord, and I just can't forget. Lord, you are my bridegroom. Please receive my love. I just want to live with you in the world of gold. I will bear many fruits of love and fruits of thanksgiving, and together make this history of life. And together make this history of life.
Since I have come, you've come as well. And today we become one with God, one with the Spirit. We unite this path of love we must walk, now and for all eternity. This path will never change. Hear the word flows without end. Proudly we go on, always for Providence. Now and always hope will shine brighter than the sun. This eternal love and hope forever shines bright. Finally, this love of ours fulfilled God's will at last. The Lord our God's promises will not fail, they will stand without change, now and for all eternity. Finally, this love of ours fulfilled God's will at last. The Lord our God's promises will not fail, they will stand without change, now and for all eternity. Since I have come, you've come as well, and today we become one with God, one with the Spirit. We unite on this path of love we must walk, now and for all
And that was The Path of Love. Before that, The Place Where the Lord Dwells, and that first song, The Flute of Truth. All right, so let's get into today's word study. And of course, every single Tuesday, we have the practical word study going off of this week's message. And there are a ton of things that we can go over. And one of the things I was really, really inspired by, of course, because this is one that I really, really believe in also, and I talk about this all the time on this podcast, is the principle of repeating history, the principle of reoccurring history. It's since the rules and the way that God works is the same, that when we see certain things happen, they will always come out the exact same way. So I loved it how in this week's message, that beginning part of the message, what do you call it? Is it the intro? or is it the preparation message, right? Preparation message is like, you should discern the time period, understand the word, and take action, but you will understand this time period through the history of the Bible. Where there are situations like this in this time period in the Bible, and the only way you'll know is by looking at the Bible. And there were multiple different stories that was brought up in the message, like Elijah and Jesus were the big ones, and Esther came up, Lot came up, Josiah came up, Noah came up. So there are a ton of different stories that we can all go over, and I'm sure we can glean a lot from multiple parts of different stories, and also looking at what would be the right way, the other perspectives. There's a movie that talks about this. Like, there's a movie you can watch that helps you to see things from other people's perspectives, and the movie's called Vantage Point. And it's about like some assassination, but you're gonna go through the exact same assassination through like 3 people's different eyes, and you come together and you get a better picture of what is going on. But it's kind of the same thing. When you go through the story of Elijah, don't just look at it through the eyes of Elijah. Sometimes you have to look at it through the eyes of Ahab, through the eyes of Jezebel, through the eyes of the prophets of Baal, or whatever it was, right? And we'll be able to understand the story much better and how it applies to us in our everyday lives. The story of Esther and Haman and King Xerxes. You had Jesus, of course, the Pharisees, Sadducees, the disciples. You had Lot with his family and his wife, especially, that turned and became salt because she looked behind. Josiah, King Necho, Noah, right? There's so many stories there, but if you look at multiple different points of view, we all play those roles at different times. Right? So already, Sunsi brought up like 6 stories that we could take a look at in the Bible to understand our situation a lot better. So, let's take, I think one of the exercises we can do today is just take a look at some of these stories, right? So let's take a look first at Josiah. Josiah is the person of God. So, it's the people who are righteous, the people who are doing the right things. He prayed. He prayed for the protection from his enemies. He did everything right until that point. But you see that it only took one mistake to destroy the will. Now, what happened? One thing that you'll see that happen here is he didn't wait for the fulfillment of the blessing, right? So when King Necho was coming, King Necho's job was he was sent by God to take care of, to be on the side of the Assyrians to fight against the Babylonians in Carchemish, right? So his job was to go and help. But because Josiah was too, he was too emotional, he was too panicked, he wasn't relaxed, and what happened? Eventually, he kind of panicked, and then he sent his army to fight against King Necho, which is an obvious loss, right? And I think that's something that a lot of us are going through right now, because one of the things that I think we struggle with is the waiting part. So the prayer part is done. God is already going to go into action. But then the moment something small pops up, we don't think that it's God helping. But instead we think, oh my gosh, God, why aren't you helping? I got to do something by myself now. And that's kind of what happens to us, right? We kind of look at it in the wrong way. And because of that, we rush into the will. And if you rush into it, the timing is wrong. And when the timing is wrong, we can't do it, right? It can't be successful. And I think a lot of times when it comes to the situation we're in right now, we're kind of like in a rush, like, God, when will you fix this? When are you going to fix this? When are you going to fix the situation that we're going through right now? Please, God, you got to fix this. And God is trying to fix it step by step, and everything happens in the right time. Now, when people say, what do you mean by the right time? Well, when you think about it very deeply, that this world is a world of free will. Because there's free will, you can't just rush something. If every single thing was controlled by God and there was no free will, then the timing wouldn't be as important. And when you look at this free will that is given to us because of love, I think that's one thing that we have to look at and say, because of this, it changes a lot of different, it changes the scenario because of free will. And, we can't rush this situation. We cannot say that God is not working with us. Why? Because what? And then this new problem happened up. And then all of a sudden, 6 more people came out against us. Oh my gosh, is this really happening? We can't make the same mistake of Josiah, right? That's why we're always like, relax, be calm, don't panic, right? Wait for the information to come out. And as the stuff comes out, we're going to get more and more information, right? Like I said yesterday, one of the big things that the people on the other side kept telling me was, oh, just wait till the audio comes out. The audio is the big thing. And I even had one of my friends saying that he had the equipment to say that it was all authentic and not edited. But then we see the real answer now. So if I trusted it and I panicked at that time, I could have switched, right? It's possible. I could have been like, oh my gosh, it's true. Oh, what's happening? But instead, what do? Don't panic. Relax. Stay calm, right? And that's what Josiah should have done at that time too. But instead, he made one of the greatest mistakes. It was a huge mistake if you think about it, right? It was huge because it would have changed the direction of how Jesus would have come. Like, well, how so? Well, remember, what was originally supposed to happen was in Isaiah, I'm not sure what chapter it's Isaiah chapter, but it says there's supposed to be a highway from Egypt to Assyria. So what happens is Egypt is going to help Assyria to defeat Babylon. So if they defeat Babylon, then the new power becomes Assyria and Egypt. And then Israel would be in the top three because Israel would be the one that would allow Egypt to go and help Assyria pass through their land, and they can easily defeat Babylon. And then what would happen is in that, where is that scripture? It's in Isaiah, I know that, right? And it says that there's supposed to be a highway. Let me just check it right here. I'm going to find it. Okay, here. It's Isaiah chapter... Is that right? Yeah, Isaiah chapter 19. And Isaiah chapter 19 verse 23 says, in that day there will be a highway from Egypt to Assyria. The Assyrians will go to Egypt and the Egyptians to Assyria, right? And they will worship together. And then verse 24-25 is the best. It says, in that day Israel will be the third, along with Egypt and Assyria, a blessing on the earth. The Lord Almighty will bless them, saying, blessed be Egypt, my people, Assyria, my handiwork, and Israel, my inheritance, which means all of them would be worshiping God. That's different. That means Jesus would not be coming to an oppressed situation where it's Rome oppressing Israel, but they would be on top. They would be one of the top countries, right, in the Assyrian Empire, the Assyrian Egypt Empire, and everyone would be worshiping God. How different would that situation be for Jesus if you really think about that? It's so different, right? It's beyond different. Like, whoa, if that actually happened, man, that would be crazy, right? The situation, that was one of the preparations for the Messiah. Right? And that's the same thing that we have to do is, if that mistake can cause such a game-changing difference, in the same way too, look at our individual level. If I wasn't calm, if I was panicked and made a decision and they said, oh my gosh, the audio was true, then my whole destiny would have been changed. I would have been out of this history. Right? That's like death, spiritual death. When we look at other situations like Elijah too. Like one of the situations that I'm thinking about more deeply these days, because sometimes I always think to myself is like, oh, when is this going to end? When will the suffering end? When will the pain end? But I look at these stories like Elijah. He wasn't just victorious. He had to wait in suffering of a drought for 3.5 years of prayer. Esther too, there was a time of waiting. She wasn't just like praying and then all of a sudden Haman was like hanged on the guillotine, right? No, there was a time of waiting where Esther was so anxious and nervous and what's going to happen? I'm not sure what's going to happen either. There was a time of waiting that we have to make it through. I talked about this last week on my Sermons in the Sky. Jesus died, and for 3 days, can you imagine how crazy it was for the disciples? It wasn't easy. And that's one of the things that I look at as one of the big things in... when I look at the big things in all these stories is there was always a time of waiting for God's time. And like when I look at like Esther's story too, when I look at like if I were to compare the story of Esther and Joshua, you kind of get to see like the balances of what is successful and what is not successful, right? And when I see Esther and Josiah, Esther was successful and Josiah wasn't successful, right? But both of them prayed powerfully. Both of them prayed for the situation. And in both situations, God was helping them. It's just that Josiah couldn't see it fully through. And it's very interesting because you look at it is Esther just gave everything to God, where Josiah all of a sudden put things into his own hands. And that's what caused his demise, right? And when you look at this is, how many times are we making decisions on our own? How many times are we doing things the way that we want? Because the situation seems like, oh no, God's not going to help me. I got to do this on my own. After you pray, after you get your answer, what do you do next? What are your actions after the prayer? That's a big question. Will we become like Josiah, panic, and then put things into our own hands when we just said we're going to give it to God? Or will we be like Esther, who prays? And yes, it's nerve-wracking. And yes, we're still nervous. And yes, we're so anxious of the situation. But she was wise, and she left it into God's hands. When you look at not just Josiah who left it into God's hands, look at Lot's wife. She was saved. She was going to be, she was on the way to be saved. There was nothing, she didn't have to do anything. She just had to run, and that's it. She was on the way to be saved, and she was going to escape death. That was like 100% guaranteed. But she turned her back at the last moment to look back at Sodom and Gomorrah, and she died. And that's something that we have to look at. Like, these are the situations that we need to learn from when it comes to the words of God. Right? Esther's great situation. Lot was a good situation because they were saved except for his wife, right? When you look at Jonah and Nineveh, right? Sunseem did talk about the story of Nineveh also. Like, it's interesting how we can see ourselves in these stories to help us understand what we need to do today. Like, when I look at Jonah, the most interesting thing about Jonah's story, it is so, it makes these prophets and central figures human. That's what I love about the story. Why does it make it human? Because he talks about rejecting God in the beginning. Like, I don't want to do this, God. I don't want to, God, come on, right? And he goes the opposite direction. And that's something we relate to. Like, that's a normal thing. We all like, oh my gosh, honestly, I might have done the same thing. Not following God's will, doing things the way that I want. But in the end, he decides to follow. And we've had that experience too. And then for 40 days, he preaches in Nineveh, which is a Gentile city. It's not even Israel. Like, Jonah is one of the only stories where he's preaching to the Gentile. Like, why would you want to preach to people that are not even your people, who are the chosen ones? But in the end, he follows the will. And he doesn't just follow the will. He does exactly what God says for the entire 40 days. But for us, it almost seems like he did things like Lot's wife, like he was complaining and he didn't do things completely. And the answer is no, he did do things completely. The difference with Lot's wife and Jonah is when it came to God's will, which is those 40 days of preaching, he did everything that God wanted. Lot's wife, she was doing the one thing that God said was, just run away. Just run and don't look back. Yes, before it, like, if you want to make the story similar of Lot's wife and Jonah, if they were similar stories, it would have been Lot's wife saying, oh, I don't believe this. Come on, is it really going to rain? Oh, no, do we need to leave our house? But then eventually says, okay, I'll follow you, okay? And then she takes everything and she leaves with Lot. That would be more similar. But when you look at Lot's wife's story, it was during the will being, like the will in process. She disobeyed. While Jonah, the very thing God wanted him to do for 40 days, he did all of it completely. He did exactly what God wanted for those 40 days. But I like it. I liked Jonah's story even more because he's human. Yeah, he defied God. Sometimes we defy God too. It was when he's on the way to Nineveh, on the way to fulfill the will. But when it was time to do what he needed to do, he did it completely. He did absolutely. He did exactly what God wanted. Yes, there was some fuss. It almost reminds me of that story in when Jesus was talking to a Pharisee or teacher of the law, and he said, imagine there's two sons. And the father says to the eldest son, can you help me? And he says, yes. But in the end, the older son doesn't help. The father goes to the younger son, and says, can you help? And he says, no, I don't want to. But in the end, he did what the father wanted and helped the father. And then Jesus asked the question is, who was the one that did what the father wanted? And it was the person that said no, but actually did it with his actions. And this is the difference between Jonah and Lot's wife. Jonah did the 40 days. Lot's wife could not complete running away and not looking back. Like that, this is why reading the Bible is so, I don't know what the right word is, but reading the Bible is so, it's so, what's the right word, where it opens your eyes. Like there's so much revelation to it because these are real human stories that we're seeing. And when we see, we're like, oh, that's so true. Oh, I was in that situation. Oh, that makes sense also, right? And you're able to learn about yourself because we're able to relate to it too, because we've all been in the similar situations. And this is this is why I love the practical word study, because we look at the word and the word's telling us so many things to do, but we don't realize how many nuggets of amazing realizations are in the stories of the Bible. And sometimes we just read the story and just say, oh, this was a story, and we end it at that. But it's so much bigger and so much deeper than that. All right. So that's something that I'm super grateful and thankful for. I hope you guys really enjoyed today's word study. I always enjoy these word studies because, it's great to look in depth into it too. All right. So there it is, guys. That is the word study for today, which leads us into today's song of choice. Found a great song. This is from Chandler Moore. Chandler Moore is from Maverick City, I believe. He's from Maverick City? Yeah, I think he's from Maverick City, but Chandler Moore, he has this solo song, and it's called He Understands. And guys, when you listen to the lyrics, it's so deep. And you'll see our situation in this too. But this is Chandler Moore with He Understands.
Have a friend, he understands. Have a friend, he understands. There's nothing new under the sun. Questions we have been said and done. Fully God and man, he felt it all. Highest king, but still he's low enough to meet us where we are. He understands. He was alone, left by his friends, and foxes have holes. He had nowhere to go, no place to lay his head. So if anyone knows, he understands. Have a friend, he understands. He understands. Yeah. And I found a friend in the high priest. Not out of touch with reality. He was a man tempted like me, so I won't feel guilty. He gives me space to be what he made understands. He's felt everything that I felt. He's lived through it all. He understands. I have a friend, he understands. He understands. I have a friend, 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 he understands. He's felt it all, tempted by it all. Still he was sinless. He lived through it all. Every question, every fear, every feeling is right here. He understands. You're not alone in your confusion. You're not alone in your doubt. You're not alone in your frustration. He understands, he understands. Yeah. Have a friend, he understands. Have a friend, he understands. And if anyone knows, he understands.
And that was Chandler Moore with the song He Understands. And I would say that, guys, that song is really great for the time that we're living in right now. All right, so let's get into today's Provi in the media, and really excited one because I read this article. I loved it. It's about apostates. It's from Massimo Introvigne. We all know him. He's a sociologist, and he studies NRMs, new religious movements. Other people call them cults, but he says that it's too negative, so they now define cults as new religious movements, because cults was never a negative term until it came out into the news and such. Now, today we're going to talk about how ex-members who become apostates learn their role from anti-cult movements. And this is from Massimo Introvigne. And I think this is a great article, okay? So we don't need to confuse anymore the difference between an ex-member and an apostate, because ex-members have no aggressive feelings against the organization they have left. Only a few become militant opponents. But why is the question? What are the special features of those who become apostates? So we're going to look at two factors that scholars have considered. And the first deals with the religious organization, the second with the process of disaffiliation. And it's normally assumed that the more controversial a religious organization is, the higher the number of apostates there will be. Now, a scholar named Bromley insisted that, and we heard about him in the last time I talked about it last Tuesday too. Bromley insisted that although there are apostates in all religions, they are mostly found among the ex-members of groups their opponents have successfully labeled as subversive. Conversely, highly respected organizations will produce more defectors and less apostates. Okay? So comparisons should preferably be made between voluntary associations a person freely joins, like a convert, than between denominations or churches within which someone was born, like born into the church. We're going to take the comparisons and not compare those two things. There are, however, several voluntary associations within the mainline churches, like, say, religious orders, lay movements, a Roman Catholic priesthood in general. Right? Although extremely vocal apostates exist among former Catholic priests and nuns, many of those leaving the priesthood or religious orders would rather blame themselves for their failure to meet the church's standards. Accordingly, they will often reconstruct their experiences through type 1, like a defector narrative. We talked about that last week. And this happens, we're told by Bromley and others, because the Roman Catholic Church is a powerful organization. And it's thus able, more often than not, to negotiate damage-controlling narratives with exiting members. And by contrast, organizations perceived as subversive, like new religious movements, most of them, right, they're typically less able to negotiate damage-controlling narratives with exiting members, thus generating more apostates. Now, this theoretical expectation seems eminently reasonable on the surface, but is not entirely confirmed by empirical research, right? Like, we're talking about more apostates are in NRMs, right? Especially highly controversial ones, more than mainline churches. But the empirical research is showing otherwise. New religious movements are normally perceived as subversive, and they tend to generate extremely vocal apostates, as we have seen, right? And a survey, when you look at surveys that are done, when possible, it seems to suggest that apostates may represent just a minority segment of former members of even the most controversial new religious movements. A large majority of former members can be classified as just ordinary leave takers, and some of them even as defectors. So a distinction may be established here between visible and invisible former members, and this is what makes it the research a little bit different. Most former members are invisible. They don't want to talk about their former affiliations. They're usually invisible. You're not going to find them, right? And their very existence can often only be discovered through quantitative research that you need access to the group's membership records and see who left and do a survey with them, right? And it's even less likely to be available for qualitative sociological work. Now, visible former members are primarily apostates, and the oppositional coalitions they have since joined make every effort to assure that they are visible. In fact, the crucial element concerns the process of disaffiliation. See, all studies show that those who have been kidnapped and successfully deprogrammed, right? So then you're in a cult, and then all of a sudden they kidnap you and they put you through a deprogrammer, right? So they're submitted to intense psychological pressure to leave the cult. And these people are more likely to become apostates. Those successfully deprogrammed are actually a very small minority of those who leave movements labeled as cults, but so are apostates. So even without being deprogrammed, a percentage of those who leave a religious organization encounter, before, during, or after the disaffiliation, an anti-cult movement. So these people who are deprogrammed, but a percentage of those who leave any religious organization, they're going to encounter an anti-cult movement. And this can happen because the process of disaffiliation is initiated by their relatives who contact an anti-cult organization, or because the persons who consider disaffiliating are curious or genuinely interested in criticism of the religion they are a part of. So that's why they'll contact themselves. Now, let's take a look at some quantitative studies of ex-members of an esoteric group called New Acropolis in France. And let's just show you the percentage of the qualitative study. And it shows that 8.3% of the sample reported that had contact with an anti-cult organization played a role in their process of disaffiliation. 8.3%, right? 70% of the apostates had been in contact with anti-cult organizations. 90% of those with such contact considered New Acropolis a cult. So 70% of the apostates had were in contact with anti-cult organizations, and of that 70% that had contact with anti-cult organizations, 90% of them considered that church, New Acropolis, a cult. Now, if you take the other side that didn't join an anti-cult organization, only 10.3%. Only 10.3% of the others. 80% believed they had been brainwashed that's from the people who contacted an anti-cult organization, against 6.7%, which is not in contact. Now, of course, for some ex-members, apostasy is psychologically convenient because it shifts any blame for actions and beliefs that may now seem wrong or even silly from the former devotees to the evil movement that brainwashed or enslaved them. If the role of the anti-cult movement is central in producing apostates, in turn, as Bromley wrote, apostate testimony is central to the entire range of anti-cult movement-sponsored social control initiatives aimed at discriminating and, if possible, suppressing new religious movements. A few apostates, such as, we talked about this several weeks back, Steve Hassan, an apostate from the Unification Church, became a deprogrammer and even obtained professional and academic credentials, and many others maintained contacts with anti-cult movements, and in Bromley's term, continue to operate for the moral status degradation of the organizations they have left. So how do they look at people? So the people who are in these anti-cult organizations, these apostates, how do they perceive people who are contented members of the organization they left? They say we dismiss them because they're brainwashed. What about the civic projects these NRMs do? And then these apostates will say, they're just public relations stunts. What about organizational affiliates and they'll label them, oh, they're just front groups. And then scholars who doubt the anti-cult organization or who are more sympathetic to the NRM will say, oh, they're just cult apologists. Bromley also describes various kinds of apostate careers. Some make a living or derive a significant part of their income from books and lectures against the religion they've left. Some recruit other ex-members trying to convert them into apostates, and in turn, anti-cult movements use apostates to claim in their attacks against religions they label as cults that the violations alleged are so fundamental and massive that protestations of innocence are summarily rejected. When a climate of hostile public opinion, like what's happening in Korea right now, is created by spreading apostate narratives, social control, public sanctions are invoked through investigatory hearings, court cases, and governmental discrimination. So what's the conclusion here? Apostates are a comparatively small minority of the former members of new religious movements that have left. They are just the most visible, as they are the only one mobilized by the anti-cult movement, easily available to the media, or ready to testify in court cases against their former organizations. Those who have followed this series, and if you read the rest of these series, well, you'll find it leading to two conclusions. That number one, apostates are not representatives of the larger population of ex-members, and that apostates' narratives are decisively shaped by their encounter with the anti-cult movements and ideology. Right? And of course, it's not saying that every single thing the apostate says is wrong or false. Right? There's not a single scholar of new religious movements would state that apostate accounts include only falsehoods, right? Nor the contrary to caricatures spread by their opponents, right? Would scholars critical of the anti-cult movements ignore the apostate literature? On the contrary, what would these scholars do? They would collect it, publish bibliographies about it, and then that are fairly detailed and complete. And they'll acknowledge that apostates may also help formulate questions useful to scholars for further research, and in some cases act as whistleblowers calling the attention on real illegal activities the authorities are able to verify. Now, in other cases, false accusations misled law enforcement and generated unnecessary suffering. For example, in Russia and Central Asia, what international organizations and NGOs have widely described as outright persecution against Jehovah's Witnesses has been supported by a laundry list of accusations prepared by a scholar whose field is not, his name is Jerry Bergman, but he's a scholar whose field is microbiology. It's not even religion. And he compiled in 1999 a useful bibliography on the early years of the Jehovah's Witnesses, but he writes in an angry ex-member tone who has left the Jehovah's Witnesses rather than as a neutral scholar, right? And his accusations have seriously damaged the cause of religious liberty and human rights in countries that were once part of the Soviet Union. Now, media and courts of law would do well to keep in mind that apostates are not representative of the larger universe of ex-members of new religious movements, where the apostates are a minority. Nor are they by definition the only or the most reliable witnesses about life in new religious movements. Yes, they were there, but so were many members or ex-members who did not become apostates, and apostates are defined by their socialization into the anti-cult community and ideology and their militant opposition against the movements they have left, which are in themselves powerful factors of distortion and bias. Accepting that what the apostates report is the truth about a new religious movement would be similar to assessing the moral character of a divorced person based on the testimony of an angry ex-spouse, or basing the perception of what the Catholic Church is all about on the sole testimony of disgruntled ex-priests. Apostates' accounts should not be ignored, but neutrality and objectivity suppose a method of triangulation where the apostate reports are compared with accounts by members who remain in the movement, ex-members who did not become apostates, scholars who studied the relevant internal literature and conducted interviews, archival work, and participant observation. They should all be taken into account. A serious use of the triangulation method also implies that the accused groups should be allowed to examine the apostate's accusations and respond to them. Media reports triangulating and considering all these sources produce quality journalism. Media reports relying only or mostly on apostates produce hatchet jobs and tools for discrimination. So there it is, guys. That is a great article on apostates and how they learn their role from anti-cult movements. And you kind of get a scholarly view. Remember, this is not what I'm saying. This is a scholarly review and studies that were done on new religious movements or cults and apostates, the people who are vehemently against it, right? And I think this is really, really good for all of us here. And you're going to notice the exact same thing happening, right? So you're going to see things, more and more information come out, and we're going to see kind of this pattern flowing out too, more than you think. All right? So there it is, guys. That is Provi in the media. Hope you guys really, really enjoyed that. I thought it was a great article. I'll leave the article in the description below. Everyone, have an awesome and amazing, amazing Tuesday, and we'll see you guys again tomorrow on the Morning Star Drive on 117.8.
It's the Morning Star Drive 117.8. You soaring up with sky, now's the time, don't delay. I'm sitting in my ride and it's time to fly. So let's realign, just listen and feel your mind.
I'm burning with desire and the passion. Nobody can stop me when I'm like this. I got my head in the zone, you know. I'm on the Morning Star Drive.